On the other hand, the exalted personality of the mystic, his self-discipline, his heroic acceptance of the labor and suffering, and his inflexible will raises to a higher term that normal power of mind over body which all possess. Also, the contemplative state, like the hypnotic state in a healthy person, seems to enhance life by the throwing open deeper levels of personality. The self then drinks at a fountain which is fed by the universal life. True ecstasy is notoriously life-enhancing, and a bracing contact with reality seems to take place, and as a result the subject is himself more real. Often, says St. Teresa, even the sick come forth from ecstasy healthy and with new strength, for something great is then given to the soul. Contact has been set up with the levels of being which the daily routine of existence leaves untouched. Hence, the extraordinary powers of endurance and independence of external conditions which the great ecstatics so often display. If we see in the mystics, as some have done, the sporadic beginning of a power, a higher consciousness towards which the race slowly tends, then it seems likely enough that when it appears, nerves and organs should suffer under a stress for which they have not yet been adapted, and that a spirit more highly organized than its bodily home should be able to impose strange conditions on the flesh. When man first stood upright, a body long accustomed to go on all fours, the legs which had adjusted themselves to bearing but half his way must have rebelled against this unnatural processing, inflicting upon its author much pain and discomfort, if not absolute illness. It is at least permissible to look upon the strange psychophysical state common amongst the mystics as such, just such a rebellion on the part of the normal nervous and vascular system against the exigencies of a way of life to which it has not yet adjusted itself. In spite of such rebellion and of the tortures to which it has subjected them, the mystics, oddly enough, are long-lived race, an awkward fact for critics of the physiological school to take only a few instances from amongst markedly ecstatics. Saint Hildegarde lived to be 81. That's pretty old back then. Mechthild of Magdeburg, 287. Ruysbroeck, 288. Suso to 70. St. Teresa to 67. St. Catherine of Genoa and St. Peter of Acantara to 63. It seems as though that enhanced life, which is the reward of mystical surrender, enabled them to triumph over their bodily disabilities and to live and do the work demanded of them under the conditions which would have incapacitated ordinary men. Such triumphs, which may take heroic rank in the history of the human mind, have been accomplished as a rule in the same way, like all intuitive persons, all possessors of genius, all potential artists with whom, in fact, they are closely related And the mystics have in the psychological language, quote, thresholds of exceptional mobility. That is to say, a slight effort, a slight departure from normal conditions will permit their latent or subliminal powers to emerge and occupy the mental field. A mobile threshold may make a man a genius, a lunatic, or a saint. All depends upon the character of merging powers. And the great mystic, these powers, these traits of tracks of personality lying below the level of normal consciousness are of unusual richness and cannot be accounted for in the terms of pathology, if, quote, if it be true, says Delacroix, quote, that the great mystics have not wholly escaped those nervous blemishes which mark nearly all exceptional organizations. There is in them a vital and creative power of constructive logic, an extended scale of realization, in a word, a genius, which is in truth their essential quality. The great mystics, creators, and inventors who have found a new life have justified it. Join upon the highest summits of the human spirit the great simplifiers of the world. The truth, then, so far as we know it at present, seems to be that those powers which are in the contact with the transcendental order, and which constitute at the lowest estimate half the self, are dormant in ordinary men whose time and interest are wholly occupied in responding to the stimuli of the world of sense. With these latent powers sleeps the landscape which they alone can comprehend. In mystics, none of the self is always dormant. They have aroused the dweller in the innermost from its slumbers, and round it have unified their life, heart, reason, will, as they're in full action, drawing their incentive not from the shadow shell of sense, but from the deeps of true being, where a lamp is lit and a consciousness awake, of which the sleepy crowd remains oblivious. He who says the mystic is but half a man states the exact opposite of the truth. Only the mystic can be called a whole man, since in others half the powers of the self always sleep. This wholeness of experience is much insisted on by the mystics. Thus the divine voice says to St. Catherine of Siena, I have also shown thee the bridge and the 3 general steps placed there for the 3 powers of the soul, and I have told thee how no one can attain to the life of grace unless he has mounted all 3 steps, that is, gathered together all the 3 powers of the soul in my name. In those abnormal types of personality to which we give the name of genius, we seem to detect a hint of the relations which may exist between these deep levels of being and the crust of consciousness in the poet, the musician, the great mathematician or inventor. Powers lying below the threshold are hardly controllable by their owner's conscious will. Clearly, take a major part in the business of perception and conception, and in all creative acts, the larger share of the work is done subconsciously. Its emergence.
Very interesting that.
Its emergence is, in a sense, automatic. This is equally true of mystics, artists, philosophers, discoverers, and rulers of men. The great religion, invention, work, art always owes its inception to some sudden uprush of intuitions or ideas for which the superficial self cannot account. Its execution to powers so far beyond the control of that self that they seem, as their owner sometimes says, to come from beyond. This is inspiration, the opening of the juices, so that those waters of truth in which all life is based might rise to the level of consciousness. We read from page 31. Actually, where did we read from? 32 to 31. We were reading
from 32 to 31.
To 32 to 33. We read from Psychology and Mysticism within the book, within Mysticism by Evelyn Underhill. We're studying mysticism. It's a long read. You could say it's a long read. It's all very true.